So just to move on now to our next panel, and let's say we have heard, I'll give you a little bit of an update, Mr. Voss, that a little bit more about the Commission's proposal on the Directive for Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence and its ambition, obviously, to ensure businesses address the adverse impacts of their actions. And we've also heard a little bit about the wholesale sector and its composition of SMEs and the fact that they form an integral part of value chains, working both with EU and non-EU partners. So to set the scene, we asked people in the audience to send a few comments on what were their concerns about the proposal. And in summary, I can highlight these was the immense workload, concerns about the workability of the obligations, and the worry that cost per order line could be added. So this is sort of the introduction really to this panel, where I really hope we can explore in more detail how wholesale should be affected, what the due diligence obligations can mean in practice, and how SMEs will be affected. I think the phrase that the Commissioner used was, yes, it is acknowledged that they will be indirectly affected, and therefore I would like to really focus on that part today. So perhaps I can introduce Mr. Voss. So if I invite you just to, for the moment, just to say a few words about yourself and also your interest in the proposal, and then I will move to the other two panelists.
Yes, hello to everyone. I'm grateful to be here, and even this has a kind of a delay, but I'm sorry for this, and thanks for the invitation. I think this is really kind of a very the core element now of this legislation. If we would like to have the due diligence supply chains and so in work, that we should also focus on it very intensively. So I'm the shadow rapporteur so far of the initiative report, and now, as you probably know, 12 committees are interested now in this piece of legislation, and I still hope, but the decision so far, I'm aware, is not taken so far for the Euro Committee. I still think it's a subject for the Euro Committee, and then we have to find a way that this at the end is practical, and therefore I might be involved in this, and I hope that we can achieve here also something what might refer to the goals or to the intention, but then also leave enough space for maneuver and practical issues for the companies who have to transform this into this day-by-day life.
Thank you. And perhaps I just take a few moments now for Mr. Bigler and Mr. Blässinger to just introduce themselves and also explain your business and why it will, if the proposal will affect you. Perhaps I could start with you, Mr. Bigler.
Thank you. Thank you also for giving us the time. I'm just here on the podium and representing the FECC, the European Association of the Chemical Distribution. Probably a participant, an important participant of this value chain we talk about today and what we heard. And also talking about being involved. And as an association, you know, we have a representation of 1,600 company members, representing about 30,000 families because of the employees. And I think also about 1,600 different locations across Europe. So the overall value of that business is about 28 billion. Of course, we heard some numbers before. I think it's still an important stake and also important for the European business. I think that's something to consider. I was very pleased to hear what the commissioners outlined. And of course, there's absolutely no room to discuss about human rights. Of course, there's no room to discuss about sustainable behavior because we, as today's generation, we're responsible to pass on the planet we have to our successor. And I think this is the responsibility we have. And on the light of that, I think there's still room to discuss on this directive because there are certainly a lot of questions mark where we may later on can touch base on. Thank you.
Thank you, and perhaps Mr. Blässinger, you can go ahead now.
Yeah, thank you. I also represent not only Josef Blässinger, the company I'm working in, also the BGA, but Dr. Jandua already mentioned enough about that. I might concentrate on what our company represents and what our business model is. So we are a family-run business, 90 years old, working in in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. We are run out of Stuttgart. The products we sell are machine parts, power transmission products mostly, and we perceive ourselves really in the middle of the SME everybody's talking about, and I always only hear the examples of big corporations. So I'm very happy to sit here and to give you a view of an SME who is struggling with the German Lieferketten-Sorgfaltspflichtgesetz for the time being. So we have, to give you a view of what that means, an SME, we have 150 to 160 people employed working for us. We have 55 million in sales. That we come later on to that. That means 200,000 order lines with 6,000 to 7,000 customers. And those customers half of them are OE customers. And the whole process for me starts when they send me a letter with a code of contact to be signed. And this is when I'm in the game. And so whatever is there in being mentioned, SME have reduced things to be done. This is definitely not the case. There is a spillover and we're fully in. And so that's what my interest in the whole topic is.
Thank you. It's very nice to have this nice picture painted of exactly what we're talking about for wholesale as well. I think it's certainly bringing to life exactly where it falls in the value chain. So, Mr. Voss, I think you already mentioned a few points about what your perspective is on the proposal, but I wondered if you can share anything that you will bring in for the next stages.
So I think the proposal, probably I do not understand everything what they have in mind if we're coming to this contractual thing, and then what I have learned is that they would like to have this so-called upstream and downstream situation. This, from my perspective, would double the trouble, and that's why I would then say, so this downstreaming thing is not what I would have in mind. And of course, then I think we need still a kind of an intelligent way to evaluate the supply chain, and that we are not having double structures and or multiple structures in place, that we can find a way, and here hopefully also digital solutions might help, but it doesn't make sense if a lot of customers at the end have to evaluate a supply chain to someone, and then it's all of a sudden might be totally different scene. So there must be a kind of an easier solution. So if every one of you has a simpler solution in mind, please let us know. It would be very helpful. Also, still, I would say why we have to evaluate the value chain in Europe itself or in the European Union. Why not stopping at, if there is a company who has also this obligation for the then supply chains later on, why not stopping there and then saying you're doing just the tier 1, and even if it's Europe, you do not have to do this. And then, of course, I'm getting, or I'm talking too much right now, but then I'm getting also this argument, but what is with the agriculture and living conditions for the seasonal workers and so on? Yes, here I have to say also our governments and our administration has still the same obligations. And if we are going forward in Europe with the mandatory due diligence thing in evaluation, why we can't let them go without their own responsibility. And so therefore, I think there's a lot of doing more in helping SMEs especially, and then trying to find good practical solutions for it. Mm-hmm. If you're reading sometimes the reports and what other political parties have in mind, then it's a kind of a shock if you're reading this the first time, mm-hmm. and then you're starting to think about how we can try to come to easier solutions, to simplify, or go only a kind of a first step in this direction. This would also an achievement already. But to have 150% already in place, I do not think this is the best way forward. And that's why I would say we need to approach this very carefully, especially if we are seeing now the reality with the transformation situations of this is digital or climate situation, and the war with the supply chains disturbed, if this is a ship in the Suez Canal, or if this is COVID, or if this is a war now. We have also to be aware that there are other conditions around what we should take into account. But at the end, we would like to move forward in this direction, and probably there will be obviously some bureaucracy in place, but I would see this already as a kind of a success, not to exaggerate this. So bureaucracy needs to be as little as possible.
So it's interesting to hear this, that easier solutions, looking again with the concerns that were expressed in advance of this meeting, is a little overwhelming, that what may be facing companies. And it's very interesting to hear as well that there may be something including taking advantage of digital solutions to help move it there. But perhaps now I can just zoom in a little as well on with Mr. Blässinger, if I can ask you as well, how you would take away what you've just heard about this overburden and what you see it meaning in practice. You've already mentioned that it starts with a code of conduct being passed to you. Perhaps you can expand.
Okay, so take that example. Let's say a customer from the automation industry, a billion euro company would send me that code of conduct, and I can either do that business or not. So I'm totally in that process. So I have to start with setting up the system. That would be the first thing. This would mean that all my contracts have to be reworked. I have to adapt my own code of conduct. I need that IT system that is tens of thousands of euro, and then I'm with that setup of systems ready, but still having those contracts are not sufficient in risk places. I have to go to these countries on the very risky parts. Let me put it into an even more practical example. As I said, we are a distributor of machine parts. Bearing would be the most sold part from us, and we're sourcing that from China. The bearing is a pretty simple part. You have an outer ring, an inner ring, a couple of balls, a cage. Not too complicated, but still, following that directive, I have to go there. Have usually the rings are machined in that company themselves. They source the balls from somewhere else. They source their metal from a steel mill, the cage from somewhere else, and so forth and so forth. So because it is a very risky country, usually I would have to go there. So I have in my company 750 suppliers, 20 of them from China. My purchasing department has 6 people in total. So this is the game we are playing. And then additionally, if you look at scaling up, obviously there are another 100 companies doing the same thing, another 20 perhaps in Germany, who have to go to those same suppliers themselves. This is redundant work. This is done in all these efforts, adding up the cost. On the other hand, a code of conduct of one customer is not the same as another one. So then again, you have to see whether everything complies then with the next code of conduct or any other contract they're sending me. So you see that for an SME, that's the really SME work, basically everything ends up on my table. And this is when then the examples come, as we heard from the commissioner, that there are already many initiatives from other big companies, that is nothing really manageable from my desk. I really support the idea of having these human rights out there, having this ESG compliance, but I have a leverage with my direct suppliers and not anymore.
Thank you. I'm sure, Ms. Bigler, this resonates well with you as well. And I can see that the Commission made the efforts as well to say and assess the effect on SMEs, but as was also mentioned earlier as well, there will be an indirect effect. And perhaps you can explain a little bit more from your perspective on this as well.
Yeah, thank you. I only can echo what you said is about our industry. It's actually the same thing, you know. We may also want to open a bracket here, you know, SME. Actually, if we would go about 20 years back, you know, when we looked at the European manufacturing landscape, especially for chemical industry, the landscape since that time has transformed significantly. There were a lot of reverse takeover in Europe happened, you know, a lot of manufacturing capacity has been transferred to the west and to the east. And Europe is left somehow as a fantastic economy without own sourced materials. A lot of key materials today, Europe is entirely depending on the out of Europe, and talk about the continent of Europe. Now we say, yeah, what does it mean to SMEs? Yeah, if we were listening carefully about what obligations an SME probably would have, you know, SMEs rely in the distribution a lot on what we call blue chip manufacturers. These are these multinational ones. They're not many left in Europe anymore. Majority of these big groups are US-based, Texas, you know, where we have the gas and we have the resources used for chemicals, also for pharmas and everything like that. Majority of players are now located in India, pharma, we know that. Others, we know them well, Korea, China, and name them. And now it goes back what you were saying is, in order to fulfill all the obligations, we have to go back to these players and go back. And now the whole thing turns around. You know, as they are group one, they want to make sure that on their value chain, they're safe. And we know that it started about 10, 12 years ago with the Foreign Corrupt Practice Act, Bribery Act, you know, remember? We all remember these things, and today a distributor, when he wants to enter in the business, he gets already due diligence questionnaires. And he has to disclose all his books, he has to disclose everything. And code of conduct, yeah, we know that very well, it's happened, and it's happened to our members, and it puts us in a squeeze. Either you fulfill, or you don't get the business. Now, what is the impact on an SME? An SME probably, you know, the questions are exactly the same thing, like maybe a company of your size, you know, wouldn't consider it as an SME in our business anymore. And what they need to do is they need to reach out to get some support. I was very pleased to hear that the Commission said they want to put some tools into place to make lives kind of predictable or easier. However, what we will do is we will have to absorb additional costs. Maybe during pandemic, we now have experienced the price increases. We see the inflation take place right now in Germany. Yeah. We see that some of the countries we're running into recession. Of course, we talk about 5 years. But I think what SME would certainly appreciate from the Commission here is also from the political part to support all of us in the business and to initiate together with the, let's say, manufacturing industry discussions with these so-called critical countries. And be honest, we know these critical countries where we talk about child labours. We know these critical countries where we talk about environmental issues. We know them, they're known. I would think that would SME very much appreciate if from the political level, together with the blue chips and the big manufacturers, we could see more initiatives in working on these countries.
Thank you. And if I may ask just a further question then, just to delve a little bit deeper, I think it's clear that the good intentions are something that's valued. But do you see really any unintended consequences as a result of the proposal?
Yeah, certainly. That's and we see that and we hear it from members. You know, the overall conditions they have tremendously increased, and there are a lot of initiatives actually going on the SMEs. We have them in the chemical industry. Remember, there's REACH imposed, and there are numbers of initiatives coming on the SMEs and right now. And we see also the demographic change in the industry and also in the SME sector. You see a lot of companies, you know, going on into the third generation, where children actually ask themselves, do I really want to continue the business my grandfather founded, my father built up under the given circumstances? And I think I'm not saying imposing, but confront this generation with all these measures and initiatives, you know. It may also can lead that some of these companies, you know, and remember, SMEs are still one a very important engine of the entire European economy. You know, we're not talking about the blue chips. We know that the blue chips, they are strong, but they're really the engines. Remembering the crisis we had about 12 years ago, remember? We saw numbers of blue chip companies being in serious troubles, while the SME market probably went through it in a rather smooth. So closing that question is, we may need to pay attention and to take care of the SMEs, being aware, even though they're not the loudest, and probably do not have the hearing or the ear of the politics. Thank you.
Perhaps, and then I can ask Mr. Blässinger. I'm not sure who would like to go first, but let me invite you to react. I know you've been sat in the middle.
Oh, me to
yes.
react. Okay.
Yes.
So we, from the EPP group, we are very strong about SMEs, and we would also like to defend. The situation we are into is now that we do not have a structural majority in the European Parliament. So there is a will of implementing these. And so even if we are not supporting this legal instrument, then there will be probably content what you even do not like, more and more of these integrated. So we are in the position in saying, oh yes, we would like to be on board, and even part of my EPP group is also enjoying this idea in approaching these better. So that's why we would like to create or be a creative part also in this legislative tool. But then probably we need to know how far we can go, because the Commission now came up with a proposal. I would say they have a good intention in saying, oh, if we have these contractual things, you do not have to put together these reporting issues. But then I think probably it's better to have the reporting instead of these contractual thing. But this is my impression. But also with all these bureaucracy, what might follow this legal instrument, what are you ready to take over some of these, and how far this would be of interest for me to defend also your interest during these negotiations. I still hope that the colleagues are open enough for good ideas, that we are meeting the intention of these tools, but or having in place probably not these burdening and bureaucracy, what we probably see now more than or before our eternal discussions. So that's why I need this feedback. And what would you, where are you ready to follow this line, and where is the limit of these? This is what I need, and also the use cases, because we are approaching these quite generally, and I do think, and this would be also an idea I would like to make, that we should open these up for sectorial approaches, and then saying if a European sectorial approach is in place, so it has to be oversight and probably agreed by the Commission or whatever it is. But if we once have these, then this is valid and not the general approach any longer. And I see still also a kind of an advantage for the companies, but even there, it's just an idea. If we are not doing this right now on the European level, other member states might come up with different legislation. We have seen this already in France and Germany, and a bit of it in the Netherlands and Denmark and so on. And that's why I think it's still an advantage to have a common European market, and hopefully having in place clear criteria, a practical approach, but also here I need to know what you are considering as practical, how far we can go, and then trying to negotiate with the others, and hopefully then coming to a kind of a practical legal instrument, what you might not really embrace, but where you can live with it. This would be kind of a situation I would love to get out of it. Yeah.
So if I may see that we have some time still left for the panel, that maybe I leave this question just for the audience in a moment, but first I would just quite like to invite Mr. Voss to comment.
Come to that one. So there's an invitation, come to Stuttgart to see us, and I show you very much how this is put into practice. I think we all endorse the level playing field, which is planned, that we have the same legislation in all over Europe, and this is really important. But back to what is the implication? One we talked about is cost, but where we need your support is, I think we can really go well into tier 1 suppliers, and this is an effort. We talked about the cost, but tier 1 is possible. But if we go beyond that, there are two problems which I see. One is IP. IP for a distributor is, where do I source from? Mm-hmm. This is nothing to be shared with my customers. And the second one is, risk management. And I must admit, from this German law and from I get from this directive, I don't have this legal security in terms of what do I have to do to be safe. Everybody's overdoing it. My customers are overdoing it, so I'm overdoing it, and so forth. And this is a chain which is never ending. And what we really need is, call it a white list, call it whatever rules which, if you follow them, then you are safe. Because from a miner to be sued who's getting the raw materials for the metals of that bearing manufacturer, that he can sue me or even my end customer. I'm insecure on that one. Mm-hmm. So if you have risk management, you can either avoid, transfer, or accept. Accepting is here a no-brainer. Avoiding is what SME can do, which means I'm not doing this business anymore, so we are out. Or we are anyway excluded because they accumulate, then they're purchasing to the bigger companies who already have set up all these systems. So this is a bit what I see as difficulties, and how far we could be going, but where are the limits? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. May I ask something? Because so the risk-based approach is something what you see as totally necessary. So meaning that if we're coming with a risk-based approach to the geographical issues and sectorial issues, so then it would mean if geographically, I would say, let's say the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Korea, or whatever, I do not have to pay attention because there is no risk unless someone is telling me something like this. So, and sectorial, so if we are focusing on agriculture and textile issues, then probably also there might be kind of a risk-based evaluation, and then probably, hopefully, it's not that doesn't has that broad focusing on these issues than what you probably have in mind.
I mean, a risk-based approach is reducing the workload, and you need a risk-based approach which is acknowledged, because for the time being, for example, in Germany, I have to go to a UN listing of, let's say, countries which do not score good on human rights. But nobody tells me that if I do a risk-based approach on this list, I'm safe. So I need a list. This is what I say. I need a list which is accepted. Because on that list, I have China and my suppliers, which are not good. And then, obviously, pretty down there is also Romania, which is an EU member state. And the Commission would probably exclude then European companies. I need something to rely on. And this is probably the most important part, to take that insecurity out.
I think it's a very good point you're making here. I think it's kind of a fact book, you know. If European Commission could provide to the industry kind of a fact book of so-called green countries, yellow, or whatever, red countries, something like that, that exactly what you're saying is that the industry has a kind of a security. We also know, I can share that here, that we have been doing some audits in China, you know. And there you go, there you have the nicest, the beautifulest, and everything like that, but you know exactly the cultural difference. I think we also have to be realistic here. The cultural difference is somehow also applying and playing into the game here. And if you don't have a local organization on the ground, it's almost impossible, let's say, for an SME to really verify what they're seeing, you know. We know that, and I think that's also something what we have to address and to acknowledge. And as I say, you know, in the beginning, I said also costs, you know, and we see also that here is an SME will rely on consultants, third-party one. And these costs, I think we also have to acknowledge these costs.
I wonder if I may now, we have some time for a Q&A, but perhaps I can also just invite, first of all, a reflection on a little bit of the alternatives, the practical way that could help achieve the aim, that we could perhaps supply here is the practical use cases, the right amount of bureaucracy, if such a term can exist, and those kind of ideas. Perhaps we can invite some sharing of that, and then I will then open the floor for more general questions. So, call for volunteers, bright ideas.
Hello. Thank you so far for the panel, and I just want to touch on the aspect of due diligence reporting when you compartmentalize it in terms of who is exempted and who is not. I represent the Chemical Distributors Association, and one of the feedback that we get is, on one hand, on paper, we are exempted. But as Dr. Leandura pointed out in the opening statement, there is a risk that the larger companies just forward the requirements or the responsibilities to SMEs. And the question is there a plan in this directed to have an impact assessment for those SMEs who are, technically speaking, exempted, but in reality that there might be some trickle-down effect when they do their requirement reportings internally?
Maybe I collect one more question or another example, perhaps. Please go ahead. And please just take the time to just introduce who you are and who you represent, please.
Thank you. My name is Manu, and I represent IKEA here. What I'll be saying is going a bit against what the general mood of this meeting is. So, IKEA, we are a big company. We procure a lot from different suppliers, most of whom are SMEs. So as you said, we start with a code of conduct for them. And we say, these are our requirements. And we have long-term business relationships with these suppliers. We have suppliers who have been there with us for more than 50 years. So the point is, like you said, SMEs would end up having to meet these code of conducts from different buyers. So instead of having multiple code of conducts, why don't we include that in this legislation itself? And instead of, let's say, excluding SMEs from this legislation, provide support in terms of training, financial incentives, in terms of IT systems that the Commission can provide to SMEs to meet these requirements. Because ultimately, end of the day, they are part of a larger value chain. They will need to keep meeting different buyer requirements. So maybe excluding SMEs is not the solution. Maybe including them in a more inclusive way would be a solution. And we could also use something that the proposal already touches upon, just to improve on using things like multi-stakeholder platforms and third-party certifications, which then could serve the same purpose for multiple companies, not just for one company. So, a suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe I put it to the floor. I don't know if anyone has a reaction they want to say. I can imagine we can start with the second question, which might be sometimes a little bit easier there. Is it possible to use tools that are already there? Is it possible to include everyone?
My point of view would be it's already everyone is in the game there. This spillover effect is a fact, and so I totally agree. Make everybody a part and take cost out of the system, which are these very good examples of putting one code of conduct into the legislation, and then everybody has to comply to that, and we will have less hassle in controlling that. Secondly, have third-party certifications. There are companies, EcoVadis and so forth. If those are accepted, very fine. Then already just they can certify themselves, and then the cost is taken from me if they can show me a certificate. If that is accepted by the legislation, again, cost out of the system. So I'm very, very much in line with what you have just said. And basically, it's like on the quality management, which started in the 80s. You started with the ISO 9000 following. And we wanted to improve the quality over the whole value chain. Why not making a similar approach to ESG over the whole value chain? So I would raise my hand for your proposal.
And I don't know if you have a comment as well, and let's not forget the other question as well. Is there a possibility to assess this trickle-down effect now?
Yeah, from my point of view, I hear you, and I could agree on this one. We had actually on the chemical distribution side, we actually tried to onboard, let's say, the upstream on these type of initiatives, and actually we could not find an agreement. Mainly not from the, let's say, from the distribution side, but mostly from the upstream, because so companies have multinational companies having different ideas and philosophies on things. But I think if from the legislative part, we're going to see initiatives coming up, maybe this could also be a trigger or maybe a catalyzing effect, convincing the industry maybe to do an extra effort and join forces on that whole thing. And I think that's something what we have to, also from the industry standpoint of view, have to remember. It's not about we against, or the industry against, let's say, the political bodies. It should be on us. It's a joint effort. As I said also in the beginning, it's our joint responsibility to do that. And if what I was hearing from the Commission saying, we're talking about a 5-year plan, Yeah, okay, 5 years. What are we going to do during the 5 years? Are we now going to work on these countries where we see critical issues there? Are we going to work on that, and who is going to do that? Will that be also, let's say, what can the industry do? And I know, like here, we know each other, so I think, if the industry joins and we maybe we talk about the entire value chain, and where does the value chain starts and where does it end? I think here is it's our duty to do that, but also keep the whole thing. And here is again something for Europe we have to keep in mind. You know, by squeezing ourselves, maybe we should always remember that we have a market, we have an economy. And I'm sorry to say, but our economy, as strong as we believe the economy is, but a lot of things which our economy depends on comes from the outside. That's something we may also want to acknowledge and not to forget.
So, to your question or situation, you have a kind of a stereotype reaction as a politician to this. So if someone is saying, oh, and SMEs should be included, our reaction is immediately, no. We have to discuss and to think about if this is the right way forward and so on. And so our reaction is, of course, saying as less SMEs as possible, and also trying to interfere these pressure from the big companies to the SMEs in saying, you are fulfilling my obligations for all of these. This is what we should try then to avoid. Integrating SMEs on the one hand side would mean also for me, so it's like communicating tubes, then less bureaucracy and less requirements and less obligations and so on. If this might be the case, then we can think about also to take SMEs on board. But so far, the stereotype behavior from other parties is increasing bureaucracy, increasing obligations to make sure that the legal system is also functioning in a very certain way. And so then I would say if we would like to have all these kind of obligations and requirements in place, then we do not, or we shouldn't take on board SMEs. So this is for me a kind of these communicating tubes where I would say we have to decide in what we would like to have. Kind of big companies, and then we can have more bureaucracy or obligations, or if we would like to have all on board, but then we need to have a kind of a flat rate bureaucracy situation.
So it feels that there are many questions still out there in examining this proposal. I think we have time for one last question.
So,
the reporting question was not.
Of course.
The only part what I could answer to that reporting question is, again, here you have the influx of this reporting from other sources. So I'm really not in the scale of size of this financial reporting that I have to do it, but my bank asks me those questions. And the more I'm financed, the more leverage I have, the more information they want to have, because they have to accumulate their risk. So that green finance hits me already with that SME kind of company. So again, it's nice to say SME are not in there. Just face reality. We are in the market. Yeah.
If I may, unfortunately, we have 3 of these reporting obligations more than less in parallel. So we have the taxonomy. It was not supported yesterday, as what I have heard by the committees. But so taxonomy for the financial sector would mean, even if we have something in place like a corporate social corporate reporting directive, a sustainable reporting directive. So even I would say the taxonomy is more influencing at the end also on SMEs, even if they are not in the scope of these corporate sustainable reporting directive, but you have to do this because of financial issues. So if you have to go to a bank to ask for credits and so on, you are facing the situation already with all these requirements on sustainable issues. And then we have this corporate sustainability reporting directive, and in addition, the supply chain, and where we can probably choose, do we want to have the model from the Commission with these contractual issues, what I would consider is not the best way forward, or do we want to have reporting obligations with a risk-based approach, where you can focus on some elements. So, of course, you have to tell me at least what do you want, but I think so far, if we are coming to this reporting situation, then probably this should already be in line with all the other sustainability reporting standards. And this is something probably where we, with this legal tool, can't really influence the practical and market situation, what you are facing already with the other both tools.
Great. We are coming up to the end of our panel. I know that there was one other question. I don't know if you have time to stay, or otherwise I will ask for closing remarks. I know that you have a quite tight schedule, Mr. Voss.
I don't know if I can stay. A couple more minutes, yes.
Okay, let's see if we can pack it in. I'm sorry.
Hi. Thank you, Mrs. Whittaker. Gentlemen, Rachel Batzel. I'm a competition law lawyer also advising on supply chain compliance. There was a discussion about whether the measures in the due diligence directive, whether they are onerous and very powerful for companies on the one hand, and whether or not, or the problem that they're potentially also very ambiguous. Ambiguity is, I guess, a part of a directive, but I have a question. Do you see the risk-based approach that the directive foresees as an opportunity for tailor-made solutions that are actually less onerous on the companies? On the one hand, that's the question and the suggestion, because that was also asked for. Associations might be a good place to pool risk knowledge on certain sectors, so that they could pool an analysis to some extent, mindful that risk-based always means looking at this particular company, but just the idea that maybe associations could pool that knowledge regarding certain sectors as a way of saving on costs for that type of analysis. Thank you.
I don't know if anyone would like a reaction on the panel, otherwise
I can go for it, I think. Absolutely, I think associations, especially on our side, that's what we do. We also had on competition law, we had some trainings for our members. Also on contractual law, informing them about the recent changes and also the obligations companies take on board. And I think here it's really, I think what associations must do for their members, That's why they are part of this, they are a member of the association. And I think the obligation, and I think that's also the great effort why we are here today. I think that we are sharing these thoughts, and that we work close with you, and also to give you in and give you we call it ammunition, and the arguments,
Yes.
for the dialogue and these type of things. That this is our obligation, and I think it's a good democratic process we have to go through. And that's at least our view from the FEC standpoint of view. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would agree on that. Those are shared values, and this is not a competitive advantage we're looking at. So sharing the knowledge, sharing the procedures is definitely something that I would support, and definitely associations could be part of that. Your first question about the risk approach of that directive, I must admit that I'm not a lawyer. I don't know how reliable that is, but from what I read, especially from the analysis, is that it's still pretty vague in terms of there's not a real white list, so to say, or there's still a gray area where I could be sued. because it's, there's not a clear line set. And this is why the risk approach is the right direction. It's a good first step, but still work to be done.
Maybe I can bring the panel to a close. I will like to shortly invite everyone on the panel to give a few closing words. And I think also the question about the legal certainty will most certainly be for the next panel where we discuss this as well in a little more detail. So make sure that you stay. But perhaps I can just pass the floor. I think we've really had a good opportunity to really deep dive, let's say, into the effect on SMEs, directly, indirectly. But if you have some final thoughts that you could share fairly quickly before I invite everyone to go for coffee. I don't know who wants to start. Maybe I start immediately to my left and we go.
Okay, go with me. No, I think I just wanted to thank you for taking the time of your very, very busy agenda and heavy agenda, and to be with us. And I think it was very enlightening to listen to you and also to the Commissioner. Very helpful, and I think in the process we are for the next 5 years, I think cooperating together, I'm convinced that we will take our obligation to make our next generation's life acceptable, and that our business are going to continue. Thank you.
And then Mr. Blässinger, if you want to go next, and then I will.
Yes, I'm very thankful for that opportunity to show the view of an SME. And my pledge would be for the future that everybody's doing his job. We have founded it, or my grandfather founded a company with a business model in mind, and we would love to work on that business model and not in all the administrative work left and right. And if there is a political idea, just as this directive, I would love then the politicians to walk away. I can go tier 1, but everything there behind should stay a political goal.
And yes, so I very much appreciate also this exchange, especially with the one who has then to work on these and so on. So therefore, I'm really asking you, give me use cases, give me also the criteria or the points you would like to have, but also how we can be supportive. It's always a chance to bring this and to have this on the table and bring this into the negotiations. It's still time to do so, and I need as exact as possible how far I might go and what we shouldn't have and what might help. If this is a digital solution, a whitelist, blacklist, geographical indications, or whatever you need, so far I would say we can oblige the Commission to present something. Or we should ask the member states, because so far we do not have a legal tool in place for coming with a regulation. And that might then be helpful in saying, before this is getting into force, please make sure that you have only one liability regime in place or one criteria catalog or standards or whatever it is. So this is what I need also as a feedback, and then I hope I can do here something.
Well, I think the message is clear. Call to arms, call for evidence. So I thank everybody for the questions and also for the great answers and discussion that we've had. So we reconvene at 4:30 and we will continue the conversation on the proposal.